Hi, I wanted to greet you and welcome you to the last episode of Simply Stated, released for season one. I'm out here at the beach, Lake Michigan. It's been completely gorgeous today and really, really high waves. Like super, super high. Like you'd think I was at the ocean actually, out like on the Pacific or Atlantic coast. Anyways, just a few things to go through. As far as the show, it's not really appropriate ever for anyone to make requests on names being released or information being given. I am a journalist, but I also have strategic relationships with the U.S. military and also actual government entities that are privileged to have the information. If somebody's not privileged to have it, then that's really your problem. And anyone making requests to have names released publicly, instead of using the proper channels, such as like filing a FOIA or whatever with the U.S. government, is actually someone that would be considered possibly in relationship. Well, I'm just going to assume you're a dork who works for the KGB or FSB, or just some dork who works for the Chinese CCP. Those are the only people that ever care about it. The reality is that most Americans and educated people looking from other countries realize that there's sensitive information that can only be released in a certain manner, and since the U.S. government already has all of it, and is doing what they want to with it strategically, and the people who need to know do know, that's kind of the end of it. So don't ever ask me to release names in any order or form. It's just not right, actually. And also, it's not your show. You're not the witness. You're not the one who has to pay for it, and you're not the one who actually has to do the work around it. I'm actually the one who does that. So that's pretty much all there is to be said about it. But moving forward, I launched the yoga with Deborah this week, and people love it. It's already got around 1.2K views on YouTube. It only ended up for 2 days. So I'm going to be doing that series for the rest of the summer. And then as far as the show, today I'm going to go through a few topics, but I think the big thing is that JLo was finally driven out of the U.S. and had to announce her divorce. It's just really interesting because she's such a pernicious and really loathsome figure, being that she can't. I mean, she's supposed to be wealthy, but she's really not, and lived her whole life parasitically off of other people working for the old KGB, what's called the FSB of Russia today. She's really a Russian person parading as a Puerto Rican, and frankly, somebody who spent a lot of time making fun of Hispanic Americans, which is just really, honey, it's just really offensive. And, I've seen a few paid people come out and try to be supportive of her, and it just doesn't really, it doesn't work at all for her to be. But why anybody would take money to support JLo is kind of beyond me. But there's obviously an issue there where she's really not someone that's trustworthy on any level, and then the fact that she has to pay someone to support her financially, that really, that's what really, like, financially she's blowing money to have people put out paid sponsorships essentially in the U.S. media. Like, that's how bad it is. And there's obviously been some recently, and I think it's sad that the U.S. government could just go ahead and arrest her, that she's fled to Europe, but, maybe over there Interpol will actually arrest her, or she'll get picked up by MI6 for what she actually is, which is a massive labor trafficker and a really violent, nasty person who spent her whole life as a woman. And unfortunately, she's hugely indicative of what's happened to the U.S. entertainment industry, and her state goal, when I knew her over 20 years ago, was that she wanted to ruin U.S. entertainment and culture, that the Russian government that trained her to be strategically placed to ruin it and make it trash. And that's what's really bothered me about a lot of the different performers that have come out who just lip sync, and Brandy's being overrun by people with money from the Russian FSB, KGB. And there's nothing you can do about it. Hollywood turned into a bunch of front rooms back in the 80s. That's kind of what it is. So, all you can do is just not be a Hollywood person yourself, which most Americans are not. But, that's kind of all it is. So, as far as, the rest of it, I think there's been a lot of really interesting news about and so that's kind of interesting. The Russian government has now decided to take a strike at the U.S. and some of the past week, simply because the Ukraine refused to let them just have Crimea recently and did some things to protect themselves strategically there. So it's kind of interesting that it's supposed to be the entire U.S.'s fault that the Ukraine won't just let Russia take Crimea. It's just completely weird. But anyways, interestingly, Taylor Swift performed recently in England, and her entire show was full of glitches and just weird stuff. Like, there's actual raw footage where it looks like she's just dead, being carried around by Travis Kelce before they fix some of it up. And then there's all these pictures from the show where You know, she's making weird faces on the back screens, and the whole show is just like a really weird mess. And so I guess that's what the English were doing with her, because I can't imagine that the Royals actually really like her. Um, and Dave Grohl actually even made fun of her because, you know, he claimed she was lip syncer who she is. The fact that she's a lip syncer who didn't even sing her own material in the first place is where it gets kind of hilarious. I did notice that Eminem has put out a few new songs. He done some performances in Detroit recently, so that's more like Michigan-related news. But one of his songs pretty clearly points to, interestingly, I didn't realize he was aware of this issue, but points to some of the guys from Luther College that kept dressing up as women that were part of the old Russian KGB that attacked people around the DC area and other parts of the country, tied to who's Ellen Hamilton, also WWE. So that's where some of those guys came from. You know, there's nothing more weird than a guy over 6'2" running around dressed up as a woman, screaming and hitting people. You know, massive rape and murder just isn't really very funny, and certainly isn't very comforting. And not clearly a trans person, but clearly someone that just dresses up the costumes and attacks people, right? So let's be really clear about that. You know, I did see some U.S. policy changes through my work over the last year or so related to that issue, which I'm really proud of. And that's a lot of why I do these shows, even though they're so much heavier and kind of harder for people to deal with. But that's sort of the point of them. You know, and I just want to say, you know, if you're kind of still confused about how it lines up, is that it really has been a choice for a lot of people, whether they were in the music industry or not, or just entertainment in general in the U.S., to, you know, they rely on the U.S. government so much, but then it becomes like almost a slip of brush in England, like Dogg Hound, like Dr. Dre, Eminem, Snoop Dogg all decided to start putting, like occasionally you'll see British flags in their videos because they decided to rely on the English. Snoop Dogg actually has Indian history in his family, like lineage. So, you know, there's kind of this weird dividing line between like who kind of is from the U.S. and sides with Russia, and who's from the U.S. or lives here and sides with the English in order to survive. And I only say that because like Cersei and Lowenholm pretty famously said they hated the Dogg Pound. Like, some of this stuff doesn't even make sense, you know, and like you look at the death of Tupac Shakur and Biggie and you finally realize it was because of those pay TV. You know, P. Diddy is pay TV. So is J-Lo. And it's called the Embassy of Russia Dave. It's a military organization that's very hateful and very heavily into labor trafficking and modern-day slavery and trafficking kids. So you gotta know it. You just gotta know it. And that's all I really wanted to get into the show, was to bring light to this stuff and go through in depth enough that people knew what was really going on. It's also interesting to note that Endeavor WME had a career development center at Yale, where my ex-husband did some terrorist work with them went. And also Christopher Wray, who has a questionable law degree, also supposedly got it at Yale. I don't believe Chris actually has a law degree, frankly, after everything that's happened. Just to move on a little bit further, you know, my show has become very popular in the U.S., at least in my opinion, popular, because I'm happy with the first watch of it, but it's also getting viewers in Canada, England, India, and now Brazil and Argentina. So apparently I'm going back to my former status of being more internationally known again, and my old network that used to run my blog is really getting up again. So it's been pretty fun. But I hope you enjoy the new series, Yoga with Deborah. It's going to be called Simply Yoga with Deborah. And, you know, it seems to be very popular already. And, you know, as far as the area I'm living in now, people have been really nice, very gracious to me about filming here and doing my shows. And, you know, they've even made announcements like, go ahead and do the show. You know, with Pulse Talkers for the state of Michigan, like they've gotten used to it. But we're coming up on the Cherry Festival here in River City, and there's going to be some other festivals going on. And it's like, you know, I have to use the old phrase from the early 90s, like, it's just, I feel like there's a need to be considerate of this area as well, because their festivals are getting started, and I don't really feel like having those interrupted, certainly not on my account with the show. So, you know, this show, as far as Simply Stated or anything that's similar to the Thought Project, just, you know, just like heavy material, all that's going on hiatus, at least for now, until the summer, you know, at least until, whether or not I feel like doing another series of Simply Stated, a shorter show or whatever, I don't know. I just know that Simply Yoga with Deborah has already become really popular, and that it has a big future for it, and that people love it when I sing and when I dance. And I think some material I cover is pretty hard for them to deal with. Just seeing people come to the realization that, you know, Beyonce's a fraud. You know, just to give you an example, I mean, like, Joe Rogan was literally on some weird clip on Fox News the other day pushing an app a casino app on Laura Ingram's show, telling people to go on and make free money. And I looked at the app, and it's this horrible scam app that's causing people to lose all their money. And the fact that Fox News is pushing that with Joe Rogan, like, it's so horrible because the story itself has no basis in reality at all. It's just this weird paid commercial for an app that steals people's money. Like, that's all I want people to know and understand is that these other issues that are actually going on, there are people nervous. We have our own storytelling share, and a lot of us are doing it now on independent media platforms. So a lot of them are platforms such as YouTube or others. But so, anyways, please keep tuning into the channel at Deborah KC on YouTube, and I hope you enjoyed the new series, Simply Yoga with Deborah. And I will see you soon. Thank you.